Hi everyone, welcome to Perspectives. I'm Zoe and this is Scott. And today we have a special guest, Rebecca Roberts. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hi.
Welcome, Rebecca.
Hello.
Rebecca is here with us today to talk about her work as an inner architect coach. She's here from Switzerland. Could you tell us a little bit more about what an inner architect coach is, Rebecca?
Sure thing. Oh, it's so nice to be here with you guys. So inner architecture coaching, it kind of came about because of my background in design, in interior architecture. What I was essentially recognizing was that we had this experience where again and again we were talking with clients who wanted us to create a space that would change their culture. So can you create a space that gives us a different culture? And again, we were explaining the space around you can facilitate a culture, but it can't actually create it. That can only happen through an internal change. And as that repeated again and again, I started equating that to my own life, because what I was seeing was so much of myself trying to curate the world around me in order to create the perfect place for the culture that I wanted to cultivate within myself. And again, I would get what it is that I thought that I needed: the right job, the right amount of money, the moving to a new country, the adventure, the travel. And all of those things were beautiful, but without me paying attention to my own, let's call it internal blueprint or inner culture. All of that stuff was nice, but it just wasn't doing it. And so that transition happened from design to the more, human operating system, human design aspect.
Wow. So do you have a specific niche that you work with this inner architecture method?
Yeah, it tends to be, actually, if you're going to call it something specific, then it's a holistic approach. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of times there's the idea of, I work a lot with mindset, so that's a big thing, but mindset of inclusivity, to recognize that the way that our body is feeling and functioning impacts how we're interacting with the world around us and how we feel, the way that our mindset and our thoughts, the way that we are creating our world around us, so actually including our spaces, the way that we recognize and deal with our emotions and how agile we are in those places. So a lot of it is looking at the root sources and asking from both a logical, practical standpoint and also the kind of untangible or intangible spiritual aspect. How do we bring it all together? Because there's a lot of pushing away of certain things that we don't like. Oh, that emotion doesn't feel good, or, oh, I don't want to explore there. And it's trying to just remember that it's all about full spectrum living. It's about exploring all of ourselves and recognizing that it's all there for some purpose of exploration and growth.
Sure. And it's mainly businesses that you work with, though, isn't it? Business owners and companies.
With the trainings, then yes, but it's the work that I do is pretty much split. It's primarily with business folks that I'm doing the storytelling trainings, so emotional connection for teams and also for communicating outwards. But then I work a lot with individuals on a one-on-one basis, and I do some storytelling there as well, but that's primarily where often it's this, there's something missing. I mean, we hear that all the time. There's something missing, there's something missing. And often my clients are ones who, they're generally super successful on the outside. People look at their lives and go, yeah, they've got it all together. But they're saying, well, I feel like I should have it all together, but I'm still not getting it. So what is it? And that's the act of kind of turning the lens inward. And that's the fun thing about what I do with companies, is that in a way, and I'm sure I'm giving it away right now, but in a way it's a bit of a Trojan horse, because you go in with something like storytelling that doesn't seem so threatening. It seems like, yes, we're learning how to communicate. But it's a way to say, yes, but behind that communication is emotional agility, it's self-awareness, it's recognizing what's actually valuable and important to you, and then learning how to communicate that outwards. But it's also first an internal process.
Rebecca, is your client base predominantly corporate or is it individual?
Right now it's a bit of a mix.
Does it vary?
So yeah, I mean, with the individual clients, a lot of folks are coming for career exploration as well. But in this, what I'm finding is that there's more and more of a blurred line. We used to talk a lot about work-life balance. And now it's much more, especially right now with everyone working from home, it's work-life integration. It's recognizing that as more and more people want to be working for companies or for themselves and really feel aligned with their curiosities and passions and excitements, then it's not so much about how do I draw the line between what I'm working on and my personal life, but how do I integrate in a way that I feel like I'm taking care of myself, but also impacting and giving value and service and my gifts to the world around me. So in some ways, the line is becoming more and more blurred.
So it's really around integration of self into the work. So how does that work in a company sense if you're trying to bring that integration into a company?
This is what I love right now, because so many companies are talking about innovation. We have to think innovatively. The kicker is that there's the idea that we can still leave the human element out, but include innovation. So in a way, innovation requires creativity. So creativity is the mental part and innovation is mental play in action. But to be able to have a safe playground for creativity, you need to feel, first of all, safe. And second, you have to cultivate a sense of curiosity in your employees. And when you do that, then you also have to cultivate a safe space. So a space where it's okay to mess up, where it's not just about, go ahead and experiment, but don't fail. Well, failure is a part of experimentation, and that's also how we learn. And so then it's developing, in some ways inside of companies, a sense of resilience. How do you continue to allow creative exploration and curiosity, and how do you actually build that in your employees? Because that's the only way you're going to get to true innovative ideas and actions, while still respecting the fact that it's really scary for a lot of us to go, okay, so it's okay to fail, because it hasn't been in the past, but now it's okay. So that culture shift is a lot of what I'm working on, and that happens at an individual level, even inside of companies,
Are there you come in and you evaluate the culture and you try and make positive shifts and changes. Is there a common theme that you notice within companies that you're constantly sort of working on with them?
There are two actually that come in a whole lot. One is ferocity for truth. Like not just repeating what we already know, but do you really want to know the truth, or do you want to just go with whatever's safe and comfortable? Mm-hmm. And the second is the counterbalance to that, which is a whole lot of grace. Like recognizing that anytime you're trying to shake things up, especially in bigger companies, that you've got some people that have built their careers over 40, 50, 60 years on certain principles that are now in question, and that we're starting to see, so maybe that's not the best way, like maybe rigid structures are not the best way to be able to open up the potential in all of our employees. But you've got some people that their entire career and their entire career success has been built on that structure. So giving a whole lot of grace to go, guys, we get it. This is not going to happen overnight. There will be some that are your early adapters that have always been kind of curious and they'll just jump straight in. But then you've got the next layer that says, once they figure it out, then I'll move. Like once I know that they don't all get fired, then I'm willing to take that next step. And then you've got the next wave that goes, okay, once all of those ones in front of me have gone through, and now there's some like standard protocols and procedures that kind of give me some structure that I can feel a little safer, then I'll do it. And then you've got some folks that will say, this doesn't feel right for me. And that's also fine. And recognizing that anytime we make changes, you've got part of the group that will say, yeah, we're on board. And maybe some others that say, this isn't so in alignment with me anymore. And that's just also part of the way that we work. And that's okay.
Zoe, what do you
Yes.
think about her excitement, her enthusiasm, her passion? She brings it, right?
Yeah, I can really feel it. Yeah.
Would you say that's your greatest attribute, Rebecca?
I would say it's definitely one of the big things, because I think it helps, because I come in and it's a little bit, how do I say this? It in some ways, it gives me a lot more resilience, because I have so much experience behind seeing these things transform, that I get that logically a lot of the stuff that we're doing, it doesn't make sense, because it's not all logic based. And so I get a lot of pushback of people going, well, yeah, but that's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
And in some ways the excitement is, I get it. Okay, I get that it's counterintuitive, but what if we had, like, I work with a lot of scientists here in Basel. There's a whole lot of science-based work that's happening. And then I appeal to that and I say, okay, but you're a scientist. So you're supposed to be skeptical, but you need to be skeptical balanced all the way around, including some of your long established beliefs. Because as long as we're equally skeptical, we can be skeptical about what's going on, but also about what we believe is possible and what we believe is not. And that's when it starts to get interesting. And in those places, that's where the excitement, I think, comes in, because it's a bit contagious. I'm like, come on, let's just try.
So was there something that clicked within you to make you decide to make the change from being an architect to going off and studying your coaching? Like, was there a pivotal moment for you when you decided I'm going to change?
There were, it was kind of a two-step process, because one was, I was working for this lovely company, but I was working internally. And I realized, wow, like I really miss the input of all of these other companies, of seeing new companies and the way that they're working and how they're interacting and what their culture looks like. And at the same time, that realization struck something in me, that I realized I was starting to care more about the people than about the design.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like, okay, so if that's the case, what if that was the transition into more of the consulting role, into the workplaces and workplace culture. And that was where the coaching came in, because I thought, okay, so I know that I already am very good at asking a lot of questions, but it would feel nice, actually, if I understood why some of the questions that I ask work. You know, understanding some of the psychology and some of the mental stuff behind why it works to probe in certain ways, and why being open and curious is actually so supportive instead of coming in and giving direction. And so then as I started doing more and more of the consulting, naturally this transition started to happen, that I started to have these conversations with individuals. And I was recognizing more and more, I can create for you the most beautiful space. Like my team can come in and we can transform your workspace. But if you don't have space within to be able to create some room and look at what's going on in your life and say, okay, so if I want to change this, I'm responsible for that. I don't need to wait for a brand new cafeteria or a new desk. But in some cases, there were a lot of people who were doing exactly this. I'm waiting for my external environment to be okay so that I can be okay. And so I naturally just started getting really curious and having these conversations. And then as I started doing the coaching degree, then I started seeing some crazy stuff happen. And as that was happening, I was falling more and more in love with really the human element. And the design was a nice venue to be able to get in and talk with companies. But yeah, I had fallen for it. So
what initiated this becoming your purpose? Like coaching and the way you coach, like, was it the work you did on yourself that you wanted to share with people, or what was it?
I mean, Zoe and I talked about this a little bit before when we spoke. You were talking about that one of your big purposes is unleashing the voice, right?
Yes.
And in some ways, it's super similar. For me, it was more shedding the weight that we carry around, like all of this additive process that I thought, well, this is how it works, right? It's all about collecting. It's all about all the things that I need to be doing and adding, and the certificates and the marriage and the job and the money, and recognizing all of that is fine, right? There's nothing wrong with it, but it's not essentially what will ever fulfill me. And when I made that shift, because that happened quite quickly, like my entire beautiful structure that I had built around myself collapsed. And in that moment, I recognized, wow, this is terrifying, because like my structure is gone. But at the same time, there was this freedom that I had never experienced before in that moment of going, oh my gosh, wait, I can do anything. I can explore over there, or I can explore over there, and it's up to me. It's my choice. There's no predefined things. Now, there are consequences to every action. So it's not just, wild and free all the time without any consequences, but recognizing that I had put a whole lot of limitations on myself, and then I was living confined inside of those. When that shifted, that was what I became a little bit of a preacher for a while. So I had to work on that, because I was like, oh my gosh, you have to see this. You have to feel it, experience it. People were like, you need to calm down.
I was going to say, isn't that in a sense a spiritual experience that you?
It hit every level. Like it touched and that's what I mean. There is no way to just go, yeah, it was a spiritual experience, because it was highly spiritual, but it was physical. Like I felt physically in my body the response to, like it really felt like I had weight drop off of me. In that moment as well, my mind started, like there was a recognition, I am not my thoughts, and I don't have to give value and attention to every single thought that comes into my mind. There are some that I can go, nope, not going to feed you, not going to entertain that. But I had never thought that before. I had always thought if it pops into my head, it's worthy of at least looking at and evaluating. But now there was this freedom. I get to make that rule. If I don't like it, nope, I'm not going to give attention to it. And so it really, I can't say it was just spiritual. It was on every depth, every level, from mind, body, spirit, emotional, everything, that it was like, okay, now is this little, I call it conscious rebellion, right? It's the chance to start asking why and why not to all of these rules that we've set for ourselves. And some of them you'll solidify, and some you'll go, yeah, it was just a theory before, but now I've experienced it for myself. And I feel it, you know, like it's wisdom. It's not just head knowledge. But then other things you go, wow, I've been holding on to that since I was 10 years old. And it is total bullshit for me now. Like, it served me then, but it's no longer valid in this moment. And that's okay. Can I be grateful for what it served? And can I release it?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about there is the conditioning that we all go through and all these beliefs that we all form over the years, and they often, a lot of the time, do not serve us as an adult at all. You mentioned
100%.
the word conscious rebellion before. I know we spoke about this last time, and I found it really fascinating the way that you described this, and you know, your passion about this topic. So I'd love for you to explain a little bit more about the conscious rebellion side of things.
Yeah. So this is kind of the action step to the inner architecture. So it still falls under that umbrella, but this is the searching and what it feels like. And it's a little bit what we were talking about with those companies. And this is where it comes from as well. Like, ruthless curiosity and abandon for truth in your questioning internally. Because a lot of times we have no problem doing that externally. Is that real? Is that true? I don't know what they think. She said this, but it didn't feel like that. Turning that inwards and going, yeah, you can question all you want outside, but when you start to really say, okay, so I see this pattern that I have, for example. Why is it really serving me? What is it? Because if I'm doing it, there's some benefit. So what is the benefit? And sometimes it sucks to see what those benefits are. It allows me to be lazy. I don't have to actually put any effort into my relationship because this is just an automatic thing and it keeps running and it's good enough. And this is all about good enough is not good enough. Because we're craving growth and we're craving expansion because we're hardwired for that. I believe that humans have this deep need and desire for both connection and growth and expansion. But the flip side of that is that sometimes when we see those things about ourselves, we have a tendency to get really mean, to go, oh my God, you're so stupid. I can't believe that you have that idea, and yada, 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 on and on. And the other part of the conscious part of the rebellion is like massive grace and compassion for the one behind all of these belief systems. Because this goes so much further back beyond just ourselves. It comes from our parents. It comes from our parents' parents. It comes from generations of things that we pick up when we're 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, that we don't even recognize. Yeah, I have this belief system because I saw it from my parents, because they saw it from their parents. And this is the pattern interrupt. This is, now that we see it, we can do something with it. But before we see it, you can't change what you don't see. And so that's the whole point behind the conscious rebellion, is looking inside, bringing a certain level of awareness, and then recognizing I can choose to act on this. I can choose to transform this. And that's when it gets really fun.
So it's really around expanding your awareness, isn't it, of self, and bringing that in. And I guess that's something you do in your coaching work with your individual clients, and then on a broader scale with companies. And more recently you've done a TED Talk as well.
Yeah, I just did a little TED Talk mini, 3-minute, like hard hitting, but it was specifically about this conscious rebellion. And it was talking about, like, I happen to grow up in Louisiana, which in the talk I say, you know, it's the land of Southern charm, but also don't rock the boat tradition. Like, it's
voodoo. And voodoo.
And voodoo, yes. And good bluesy jazz, right? Lots of beautiful things about the South. Amazing. And the South, just like any other place, we learn from our cultures, we learn from our surroundings, we learn from, you know, our parents and our parents' friends and our friends and our teachers. Everything has beautiful influence on us. And there is nothing wrong with gathering and collecting, because as we're young, we don't always have the experiences to back up those belief systems. And so sometimes we just take on things simply as facades. Like it looks good, and right now it works. It's rules that give me some structure, and maybe I need some structure. And then there comes this turning point, and I think that happens for each of us at a different time, but there's just this gnawing on the inside that goes, okay, there's something more. And for me, it just started with a conversation with a really good friend. She's Dutch and like super direct, and we were talking about politics and religion, and at the time we had very different views. And in a really like super curious conversation, at some point in time, we were talking specifically about religion, and she said, "Why do you believe what you believe?" And what I talk about in the TED Talk is that there was a split, because that question sunk in a way that it never had before. And I heard this little voice in the back of my head going, why do I believe what I believe? Like, really, why? And it started a questioning process that was really honest inside of myself. But I can remember on the outside, like listening, almost like split personality, to my mouth just ramble on all of my pre-programmed answers to her. And it took a couple of weeks till I went back to her and I said, okay, sorry, but that like blew my mind. I have to tell you what happened after that. And because it started to kind of break up the rigidity within myself. Because rigidity feels good when you want safety and structure. But when the other part of you, the paradoxical part that longs for freedom, is not getting to explore and being able to have the room to just get curious, eventually, I believe some, maybe sadly it's on their deathbeds, but that recognition that, wow, we're paradoxical beings. We both crave safety and we crave adventure. We want to be home and we want to be wandering around. You know, all of these different things live within us, and to be able to acknowledge and respect that. Yeah.
Would you say that would be one of your primary moments of clarity?
Yeah, definitely.
Because it sounds kind of subtle to be so profound. Sometimes it's disguised that way, right? It doesn't have to be that white light experience.
Yeah. If you think about it like a seed, it planted a seed, which in that moment, it felt kind of significant, but then that continued to grow. And like the little acorn that becomes the oak tree, I mean, that's a cheesy analogy, I know, but in a way it was a bit like that. And the more I fed my curiosity, the more I allowed my curiosity to turn inwards, because that was what made me a good coach. I was always really curious about the outside world, but I had been afraid to turn it in. So then that was always just the question of, okay, so when I started in essence watering that seed, the moment itself wasn't so significant, but looking back, I can recognize that as one of those seeds that started like a massive revolution within myself.
The seed that started the forest.
Yes. Yeah, and it's true. It is a forest. It's not just one tree, because there's so many places that comes up, and I'm going, oh, I have never thought about that before. Isn't that interesting?
So if people were wanting to find you, Rebecca, what would be the best way? Would it be through your website? Do you have any online programs happening at the moment? How can people find you?
So probably the easiest way is the website, because everything's there. I do a lot of these little short videos and also some audio clips from podcasts, from the podcast I did with Scott. I've got a couple of out. But that's an easy way to get a feel for the work. and also see the programs that we've got going right now. So there's one that's called Breaking Ground, and it's specifically on that resilience piece of, if you want to, and it's the analogy actually of the seed breaking ground into action, right? So it's really the essence behind how to begin moving on what we see, and knowing that, yeah, challenges come up, and that the awareness that this is all part of the growth process, and that it's not just because I got knocked down that, oh, I'm not supposed to do this, but this I'm supposed to learn from and then continue to move forward. So yeah, so the website would probably be the easiest way to just see the full umbrella.
Okay.
What is the website?
The website is
Maybe tell us the name of the website. Just saying, might help.
Yeah, fair. Good idea. Thank you.
There are other people like me out there that just takes a little bit longer.
Yeah, fair. So it's RebeccaRoberts.com, and that's CCA. So Rebecca Roberts. Ta-da!
You know, Rebecca, what I like about your approach is like you work with real sophisticated, successful people. Like what entices me about it is like you've explained this before, and it kind of drew me when you talk about just being like childlike and a childlike innocence and enthusiasm. And when you can break down all the nonsense that's happened between when we were innocent little kids and to wherever we are now, whatever that is, all the conditioning, all the stuff, that's when you can start to do some work. And for you to be able to do that would make you available to anybody that's available.
Yeah. Well, because it's about integration, right? There's a lot of times where we think, I leave my past behind, leave aside those childish ways. Now I'm an adult. But there's a reason why we teach children to play, why we say, go out and play. It has massive value, but at some point in time along the way, we have this idea, no, I'm not supposed to be like that anymore. And so a lot of times what I'm doing is in sessions or in trainings, I say, okay, we're going to play, and we're going to rediscover the value of play in unleashing that creativity and playfulness, and like returning to the sandbox in a way, not leaving behind all of the wisdom that we've gained, but integrating it so that we're once again able to play in all of these different elements and realms. So yeah, I like that. And I love the childlike wonder. I think there's so much potential there.
Yeah, I think that's what separates you from so many in your approach.
Thanks. We're spreading it. Keep it going. You guys do the same thing, even in the way that you ask the questions, you know? That's what's so nice, is that there's curiosity there. I mean, the fact that you even call it perspectives, right? It's the desire to explore and to see things from as many different angles and to go, wow, that's interesting.
You have no idea how much fun this is. What I learned from Zoe, it's just really good. I benefit so much from the other perspective, from her perspective. So this is a lot of fun.
So well. Super nice. Oh, it's a delight to be here.
Yeah, it's been great having you on. I did want to ask a little bit more about your program that you mentioned. Is that specifically for business owners, or is that for anyone?
That's for anyone. And it's work at your own speed. In essence, it's together with another lovely lady named Ziba Khan, and she's in Singapore. And we connected through just like happy serendipitous events. But she has a beautiful way of calming, and I've got an energizing energy. And so together, what we did is we said, okay, so how can we create something in a way that allows people to move like consistently, to start right now, where they are in this moment? Because I know myself, and that's the Energizer Bunny side of me, is that when I see something that I'm interested in, I want to go now. Like, don't tell me it starts in 12 weeks. I want to start now. But also for people like me, we set it up on a drip system so that each day a new video in a system is released. So it's 28 days, it's 1 month. And the first half is essentially of really reconnecting with the self, with the depth that exists here, and finding a whole lot of trust, and then using that as an anchor point and a foundation to then really go into action and movement. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And that is also on my website, but that's also through breakinggroundprogram.com. So that's how people can find it directly. But it's super.
So what do you have coming up right now? Like, what's the next big exciting episode in your ongoing career?
Well, actually, the next exciting thing is something local, because my partner and I are doing a local training, coaching training, actually, for people that are really wanting to learn and understand themselves better, but then specifically how to bring themselves and their questions and their wisdom and their experience and their knowledge and all of that out in a way that has a bigger impact, that allows for them to feel confident when they go into a conversation with their boss or their colleagues, to really bring awareness as a topic, to start bringing in the conscious rebellion stuff, even inside of their teams, to go, well, why not? Or why haven't we explored this? Or so it's really about empowering as many folks as we can with raising the level of consciousness to be able to explore and play, no matter whether that's in the specific coaching realm or in your personal relationships or your family or the workplace. So that's really fun, and that's coming up in the summer. That starts. So that's local here in Basel in Switzerland.
I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on and talking to us today, Rebecca. It's been amazing.
It was wonderful. Thank you guys so much, and keep it up. Keep spreading those beautiful perspectives. You guys are awesome.
You're the best, Rebecca. So what is it? RebeccaRoberts.com?
Yep, that's it.
Check that out. Thank you so much, Rebecca.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste.